And I think in Liverpool, you see the gap between children from deprived families and everybody else growing the longer that children spend in the education system. That gap, starts off very, very small and it grows bigger. One of the things we're doing in Liverpool is we're trying to bring all agencies together to focus on the first 1,000 days in a child's life. And I think we really need to re-engineer what we do with education. It's good, we talk about universities, we talk about higher education, but we don't talk enough about early years. We don't talk enough about what we do with children from actually even before the born, what we do with very, very young children. And I think that we need to have that focus. So what we're trying to do on that in Liverpool is to keep investing in children's centres, keep making the case that children's centres should be a universal service, a proportionate universal service, so we put more into those children who need it the most, but it's a universal service in even those most affluent parts of the city, that we still have that as a universal service, because some of the issues that children face, some of the issues that families face, particularly in things like social isolation, with things like SEN, with lots of other things as well, it's not actually linked in with deprivation. Some of them are, but some of them aren't. And I think we need that focus in there with early years. The other thing I think we need to be looking at is around how we fund nursery education. And again, it's one of these things I think is really interesting. It's sort of the unintended consequences of public policy. We used to fund 15 hours of free education for 3 and 4 year olds. What happened under the coalition government, I'm not actually being critical about it, the Lib Dems came in and said, we want to have a targeted offer to the poorest 2-year-old children from the poorest families who are 2-year-olds. Great policy. The Conservatives, the other side of the coalition, came into it, well, we'll give you that, but what we want to do is we want to increase the offer for 3 and 4 year olds, but just for working families, so that working families get 33 hours of education. And the unintended consequence of what we're seeing on that is, and I've seen this in my own ward, I represent part of Kensington, it goes up that far, my ward, is I've seen a provider actually stop delivering for 2-year-olds because there's more money in the system if they focus on the 3 and 4 year olds and they focus on the working families. So what we need to do is I think we need 30 hours of free education from the age of 2 that's available to everyone, and it gets rid of that some of that unintended consequence. We need to focus investment on early years. Second point I'm going to make is around vocational and technical education, and I think we can learn a lot from countries like Germany, from countries like Switzerland, from countries in some of the Scandinavian countries around what's happening with vocational technical education. We have around 50% of our young people experiencing higher education, going to university. That's great, we need to do that. This isn't an either or. But what do we do about, we used to call it the forgotten 50%, those young people who aren't going into higher education? What do we do then? We need to be reinventing, we need to be investing more into technical and vocational education. We've done quite a lot in Liverpool around this. We've got a university technical college. I'm really proud to be part of the team that brought that to Liverpool, which is a new 14 to 19 pathway focusing on vocational and technical education. In Liverpool's case, it's around creative and digital, the life sciences. We've also got 3 studio schools. One's creative and digital, one's around design, and it's really good that we've got that. We are reinventing what we're doing. I think we need to step that up as part of our education system, and it's one of the key challenges that we face. The third thing is around creativity. And I think this is something that we see, not just in Liverpool's education system, but probably internationally around education. Children are very, very creative. Yet you find the more education they have, it knocks the creativity out. of children. Ken Robinson wrote a fantastic book. He's done things on YouTube, on TEDx talks, and talks about this. But the more education you have, the less creative our children are going to be. Actually, to be active citizens, to be, part of the jobs of the future, the businesses of the future, we need more creativity. We're entering a world where there's going to be more automation, where lots of those sort of middle tier jobs are going to go out of the system. The only way forward is around creativity on this, and what are we doing about that? I think we need to completely reinvent what we do in schools. One of the things that we should be looking at is what actually happens in schools. You go into a school, it's still a very Taylorist organisation. There's a bell, you sit in, people sit in rows. It's about teaching people to work in factories or work in offices, work in jobs that aren't actually there anymore. So there's some stuff we're doing. We spoke earlier, I tweeted before about an initiative called Philosophy for Schools, which is really out there in lots of schools in Liverpool, lots of primary schools especially. And it's teaching young people to think for themselves, to be critical. It's teaching them to be able to argue with each other, to negotiate with each other, to do that in a rational way. I think initiatives like that in schools are really important. We've signed up to a thing called Global Scholars in Liverpool, where you've got classrooms of children from all over the world working together using IT to do a project together and to learn from each other on that. That's the kind of thing that we're going to have to, everyone's going to have to do in the world of work. It's about collaboration, and I think it says something about the type of open education system, the open society, the open economy that I think we all want. Fourth point I'm going to make, the fourth big challenge, is around lifelong learning, and I think learning doesn't stop. I think we're going to, all of us are going to have to reinvent ourselves, gain new skills. The way we look at education is going to change, I think, quite fundamentally with that. It's not going to be, early years, primary, secondary, tertiary education. It's something that we're all going to have to do. We're all going to have lots of different types of careers. We're all going to have lots of different skills, lots of different jobs. Sometimes we'll be employed, sometimes we'll be self-employed, sometimes we'll be doing paid work, sometimes we'll be doing unpaid work. What does that mean for what the education system looks like? One of the things we can do is bring all aspects of education together. It's a very, very fragmented system at the moment. Bring it all together so that there's more clear pathways, so that we can do that. We probably do need a new relationship between what the state funds, what individuals fund, but also what employers fund. What do they put into that system? I think we need to go further. I think we need to be looking at things like universal basic income. I think if you look at the role of automation, if you look at welfare reform, if you look at things like that, we need to be looking at ideas like universal basic income. John McDonnell announced yesterday that there's going to be a pilot on that. I think he could do worse than bring that in Liverpool. It might work, it mightn't work. There's things we'll learn about it. There's things that, it might work in principle. Let's embrace some of these new ideas, and let's sort of bring them in as part of how we need to look at education. So, to end really, sort of what does this mean about Europe? And I think EU membership is more than just about being a member of the European Union. And I think the debate has moved on from where it was 2 years ago. It's not about remaining, it's not about leave. I think it's going to be about something fundamentally very different going forward. I think it's about a vision of what kind of country we want to live in, what kind of economy do we want, what kind of society do we want, what kind of citizenship do we want. And I think there's two quite stark models out there. I think you've got a European model, a model that's about responsible capitalism, a model that's about the social democratic state, the model that recognises that markets can't deliver absolutely everything, that externalities like education aren't going to get funded in the way that they should do if you just rely on businesses and you rely on markets to do that. They're not going to do it because markets don't have that 20, 30, 40, 50-year perspective that governments and the state can have. So I think that's one of the things. I think you're seeing a different model with Trump, with Boris Johnson, with Jacob Rees-Mogg, with some of the people who are saying they want to leave the EU. The reason they want to leave the EU isn't because they don't like the EU, it isn't just because of that. I think it's also because of what the EU means. I think it's because they want to have a free market neoliberal agenda where markets run everything. And I think there's two very, very distinct models there. I think it's also about what kind of society do we want. Do we want an open society? Do we want a society where we embrace change, where we recognise that the forces of globalisation and migration mean that more of us are going to move around, we're going to become more mobile because it's easier to do. We embrace that. What are the advantages of that? You can see that quite clearly in Liverpool. We've got 4 primary schools in central Liverpool. Every single one of them is full. Every single one of them sees educational attainment lift up because of migration. That has an impact for white working class dockside communities in Liverpool. Everybody benefits from that. Liverpool has benefited hugely from migration. It's not just about EU funding coming into Liverpool. That's been important. It's what has happened because of that, how businesses have changed, how we've become a much more open city. And I think we need to be shouting about that much more than we did during the referendum campaign. It's not about remain or leave. It's a fundamental question. What kind of economy, what kind of society, what kind of country do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a country that embraces change, that is open, that we work collaboratively, that we try to rein in markets, we try to use markets so that they can benefit society, so we have an economy that is run in the interests of the people, not people run by economies. And I think that's the fundamental debate that we're going to see over the next few years. And I think that all of us in this room are on the right side of that debate, and we'll win that debate.
Thank you very much, Nick. I think also that point